Hi class, welcome back. Now, we are going to have another new lesson for understanding the self. Now we are going to have chapter 2, Unpacking the Self. Lesson 1, the physical and sexual self, part 2. In our previous presentation, we were able to discuss the part 1, where we were able to discuss some of the important aspects that one or an individual should know more about their physical aspect and its relation to the sexual self. Now we are going to continue. In here, we are going to have lesson 1, the physical and sexual self, part 2. Alright, so in my previous activity to you, I asked you to draw or visually present through drawing or using a poster the difference between the parts of the female reproductive system and the male reproductive system. Now, these two parts, these two systems exhibit sexual arousal. Though these are not the only two parts that excites an individual to be sexually aroused. We have the term or concept erogenous zones. Alright, now let's define what is erogenous zones. They refer to parts of the body that are primarily receptive and increase sexual arousal when touched in a sexual manner. Erogenous zones is actually parts of our body when touched, it excites the sexual arousal of an individual. Commonly known erogenous zones are the mouth, breasts, genitals, and anus. Other common areas of the body that can be aroused easily may include the neck, thighs, abdomen, and feet. Now, erogenous zones, the most common erogenous zones that excites or exhibits sexual arousal would be the mouth, breasts, genitals, and anus. So, as mentioned a while ago, erogenous zones when touched, increases sexual arousal. So the mouth, the breasts, genitals, and anus, when touched, increases sexual arousal. Though we have the erogenous zones where increases sexual arousal, also we have other parts of the body that can be aroused easily, all right, but not as aroused as how the erogenous zones give. So other areas of the body that can also be aroused easily will be the neck, thighs, abdomen, and feet. Now let's talk about human sexual behavior. So let's define it first. It is defined as any activity, solitary, between two persons or in a group that induces sexual arousal. So when we say human sexual behavior, it is the activity between two people or in a group that excites or increases the sexual arousal of each other. So there are two major factors that determine human sexual behavior: the inherited sexual response, patterns that have evolved as a means of ensuring reproduction, and the degree of restraint or other types of influence exerted on the individual by society in the expression of his or her sexuality. So our human sexuality or a human behavior can be defined or be determined using these two major factors. First, it can be inherited. That is our sexual response during that is made, or rather that is also part of our body. That is the sexual arousal that is part of our body. This is due to ensure that the reproduction among us is possible. All right. So we have the inherited sexual response, and also the influence of the society. The influence of the society depends. Excuse me. It depends on the society of an individual where he or she grew up. So it depends on how they view sexuality, how they view sex, how they view sexual behavior. All right, because in other places, or in other places or religion or belief rather, are tries to avoid sexuality or being sexually aroused or active before marriage. All right. So in the Catholic Church, we practice that belief that it should be marriage first before having a sexual intercourse. In other culture, it is said that when you reach or when you are already on your when a woman already have their first menstruation, that is the time that they are already allowed to interact in a sexual intercourse. But yes, again, that depends on the society where the individual lives. All right, now let's go on the types of behavior that yes, types of behavior in sexual self. First is the solitary behavior. Solitary behavior is the self-gratification, means self-stimulation that leads to sexual arousal and generally sexual climax. Most self-gratification takes place in private as an end in itself. So solitary behavior is usually done by individuals who doesn't have any partner or who's not yet married or are single individuals that needs to release their sexual tension inside their bodies. So usually that's why it's called self-gratification or self-pleasure. All right. So this yes, in males, of course, we have the term masturbation, and also in females, they have this term also masturbation. So this types of masturbation depends on the the gender of the individual. So it has a different process. But in here, the solitary behavior, it is the behavior where an individual on its own will self-gratify itself to, of course, to release the sexual tensions inside their bodies. Again, I'm sorry, before I proceed to the next part or page, it is private. It is usually done in private, okay? And its intention is to be done in private and to end the sexual arousal in itself, all right, by itself only. All right. Okay. So my apologies on that. I was able to switch on the page. Now, petting differs from hugging, kissing, and generalized caresses of the cloth body to practice involving stimulation of the genitals. So, petting or making out is different from hugging, kissing, and generalized caresses. All right, if you have clothes on it. Okay, so petting again, that's making out. So it's very different. It's very different to just simply hugging or just simply kissing or just caresses on the clothes. Okay, petting or making out often leads to coitus. Now let's define what is coitus. Coitus is the insertion of the male reproductive structure into the female reproductive organ. Is viewed by society quite differently depending upon the marital status of the individuals. So in simple terms, coitus is sex, all right? So it is the, of course, just defined in here, it is the insertion of the male organ to the female organ. So this again depends on the society where the individual grew up and views what coitus is, all right? So it depends on their beliefs, religions, and many more. All right, so now let's go on the physiology of human sexual response. All right, so the human sexual response goes on different phases. So let's go on the first phase. The first phase is the excitement phase. Excitement phase, there is increase in pulse and blood pressure and skin temperature. Flushing and swelling of all the sensible body parts are also experienced. Symptoms of arousal eventually increase to a near maximal physiological level that leads to the next stage. So the excitement phase occurs when the two individuals are either making out, and in this phase, the individuals started to feel that their pulse are getting faster, their blood pressure are getting, I'm not sure, high, and their skin temperature changes into warm to hot temperature, like hot flushes. All right, and also the genitals the genitals are starting to extend. All right, so that's both in males and females. And also, the symptoms of arousal started to start on the physiological level. Now let's have number 2, or the phase 2, plateau phase. It is generally of brief duration. If stimulation is continued, orgasm usually occurs. So this one is just so brief, it's so short, but when the two individuals continue it, the orgasm will proceed. Okay, so that will be actually the next phase. That includes the next phase will be the third one, the sexual climax. It is marked by a feeling of abrupt, intense pleasure. So in here, the individuals oftentimes feel the orgasm. Okay, so for the for individuals who doesn't know what orgasm is, so orgasm for females are releasing of fluids, and orgasm for males are releasing also their sperms as well. All right, so that's orgasm. So this orgasm usually happens in the sexual climax. So the two individuals feel intense pleasure when they reach this sexual climax, or the third phase. And then we have the fourth phase, which is the resolution phase. It is the last stage that refers to the return to a normal or subnormal physiologic state. So in here, it is the individual's sexual arousal tends now to subside and returns to its normal condition or normal physiological state. Alright, so now let's talk about the influence of the nervous system on the sexual behaviors. Okay, so the first nervous system factor is the autonomic system. The autonomic system is involved in controlling the involuntary responses. Alright, so the autonomic system, these are automatic parts of the system that happens, or that automatically happens inside our body. Like for example, heartbeats. So those are automatic. We do not have to dictate what will happen to our heartbeat. Okay, so that's one example of what of the autonomic system. So in sexual behavior, autonomic system is also involved in the sexual behavior. Next, we have the hypothalamus and the limbic system. The hypothalamus and the limbic system are the parts of the brain, believed to be responsible for regulating the sexual response. So hypothalamus is the one that helps us have the feeling of love, love or kilig. Alright, so that's why other people keeps on telling, or other psychologists or doctors will keep on saying, I love you from the very bottom of my hypothalamus, because that's where love is being felt. Alright, heart is just pumps the blood. Okay, it seems like the heart is actually beating on it, but hypothalamus actually helps it. Alright, and then after the hypothalamus, we have the limbic system. Alright, so hypothalamus and the limbic system are the two parts also of the nervous system that regulates the sexual response of an individual. Okay, we also have the lower spinal cord, leads to erection and ejaculation for male, and vaginal discharges and lubrication for female, when the genital and perineal areas are stimulated. So we have the spinal cord, specifically the lower spinal cord for the male, so that helps the erection and ejaculation. And then we have the vaginal discharges and lubrication for female. So this one is when the genitals are stimulated. All right, so erection is, of course, when the male penis erects, okay? Or yes, please do search on that. And ejaculation is when the male or the penis releases the sperms, okay? And then the vaginal discharges, these are the vaginal discharges and lubrication is that when the female organ releases fluids. All right, so now let's continue on the most common sexual problems. So the most common sexual problems involve the physiological problems and the psychological problems. Now let's go and talk first about the physiological problems. Diseases that are due to the abnormal development of the genitalia or that part of the neurophysiology controlling sexual response. So when we say physiological problems, it entails the physical problems, okay? It's either on the genitalia or many more. So this physiological sexual problems entails on the physical problems that helps an individual to be sexually aroused or give a sexual response. So that's the physiological problems. Again, when we say physiological problems, these are physical. And then we also have the psychological problems caused by socially induced inhibitions, maladaptive attitudes, ignorance, and sexual myths held by society. So when we say psychological, it entails on the psyche of the individual, the psychology behind the sexual problem. Okay, so it's either they experience a trauma when they on their first experience on sex, and they experience a very not good experience, or have seen, or many more. Okay, so when we say psychological, that entails to the psyche of the individual. That includes the mental behavior and the mental processes and its behavior. So again, physiological problems entails to the physical aspects, and the psychological problem entails to the psyche of the individual, or the psychology behind it. All right, so here are the other examples, or yes, other examples of the sexual problems. We have the premature emission of semen is a common problem, especially for young males. So premature emission is the premature or the immediate release of the semen of the young males. Okay, that should not be released as soon as it is, but it was released unexpectedly. All right. So we also have the erectile impotence as almost always of psychological origin in males under 40. In older males, physical causes are more often involved. When we say erectile impotence, the penis of the individual, or the man, or the male rather, wasn't able to erect. All right, so even though they already are engaged in the initial sexual arousal phases, their penis is still not yet aroused. Okay, so in individuals or males under 40, it is often due to psychological origin, while in older males, due to their physical causes or their physical condition. All right, so we also have ejaculatory impotence. Ejaculatory impotence, which results from the inability to ejaculate in coitus, is uncommon and is usually of psychogenic origin. When we say ejaculatory impotence, so again, ejaculatory or ejaculation is when the male releases the semen. Okay, so in here, when we say ejaculatory impotence, the male wasn't able to release semen during sex. All right, so that's which results from the inability to ejaculate in coitus. So instead of releasing semen in a very natural way when the male wants it to be, it doesn't release anything. Okay, it doesn't release anything, and this is due to the psychogenic origin. When we say psychogenic origin, it is due to the psychological aspect and also to the genetic influence of the body of the male. All right, and also for the female, we have the term vaginismus. All right, vaginismus is a strong spasm of the pelvic musculature, constricting the female reproductive organ so that penetration is painful or impossible. So when we say vaginismus, the female vagina wasn't able to expand during sexual arousal. It should expand because in sexual arousal, especially when the individual started to trigger their sexual arousal in their bodies, the vagina should start to extend. However, in the vaginismus, it doesn't extend. This is due to the strong spasm in the pelvic. All right, and because of the vaginismus, the female reproductive organ, or the vagina, doesn't expand, so the penetration of the penis to the vagina is impossible or painful. It leads sometimes to bleeding or very painful sexual intercourse. All right, so that's the last part of, or the last slide. This is the last slide of this presentation. So I've tried to explain everything in a very good manner. So if you have any questions, please let me know in our chat box, in our group chat box. So thank you very much, and see you on our next video. Bye for now.